Hey everyone, I'm back. I just wanted to put out this video because if I don't, I am gonna keep on procrastinating and stalling, and I overthink everything. And I started doing my testimony video like a few weeks ago, and something happened with my phone, and I had to stop, and it just messed up the whole thing for me. So I decided not to put that one out, and I'm just gonna put it out. I'm like on my way to Walmart, and I'm like, let me just put the video out. And so I'm gonna be sharing a little bit of my testimony of how I got saved, and just some history and some background in my childhood growing up. So anyway, growing up, my parents were separated. I grew up with around a lot of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and I'm not talking bad about anyone, my parents or anything. I love my parents. I love my mom and my dad. Um, I want to speak the truth. This is my testimony, and uh, so yeah, my parents were separated. I grew up around a lot of drug abuse and alcohol abuse. My dad was an alcoholic, and my mom at the time um, was she used a lot of different kinds of she used drugs. I'm not gonna say exactly what it was, but I grew up around that, just a lot of dysfunction. Her around her, my mom and her friends, drinking and using drugs, and there was a lot of fighting, and I just grew up around that, just um, the lifestyle of hanging out, partying, drinking, and doing drugs. That's what I grew up around. My mom and her friends, and so that's that. Growing up, I had my grandma and my aunt, my mom's sister. Um, they were there for me. My aunt, she still is. She's like, she's always there for the whole family. She would like take me away, to pick us up, and my aunt was always there. She showed us like a side of life that I wasn't familiar with. Every time I remember growing up when my aunt would take me um, to her house to stay over and stuff like that. Like it always felt like she was taking me to like another world. And to me, like when I was growing up, I always thought like it was like the good life, because when I went back home, it was like the complete opposite. So anyway, like I said, my dad and my mom were separated, but my dad would pick me up here and there, like I don't know, maybe like a couple times a year or something like that, maybe more. I don't remember, but I do remember, my dad would come and pick me up, and I would like maybe spend the weekend with him or stuff like that, or whatever. And we always went out. Like growing up, we moved around a lot, um, and I never had a steady, stable place. Where I lived for a long period of time. It was just maybe like a few years here, a few years there. It was We moved around a lot. So, um, okay, where was I? So yeah, I grew up around that drug abuse and alcohol abuse lifestyle, um, and so I remember when I was younger, me and my sister were not raised together. My grandmother raised my sister, and it's just me and my sister. It's just us two. And my grandmother raised my sister, and I still with my mom. But my sister and I would stay together here and there. Like my sister would come and stay with my mom, stay with us, and then sometimes I would go stay with my grandma and stuff like that. So anyway, that day, there was one day specific, um, that me and my sister and I were sleeping in the living room, and we're on the sofa bed, and it was Christmas time around that time, and there was a Christmas tree in the living room, and it was on, like the lights were on or whatever. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and when I looked towards the Christmas, I sat up in the bed, and I looked, and I saw two huge glowing figures just walking back and forth. Um, they were bigger than the Christmas tree. The figures were taller than the Christmas tree. They were walking back and forth, as if like, they didn't look at me. I just knew when I saw them, and I was young. I don't know what age I don't remember what age I was. I have to sit and like calculate from that place that we were living in. And I have to say, I probably was in between the ages of like 5 and 7. So, but I remember, and when I woke up, I sat up, I saw the two glowing figures, and I was not scared. I was not scared at all. I was just looking at them, and they were walking back and forth, and they weren't looking at me. It was kind of like guards. They were like guards, but they were huge, and they were like glowing. They were very bright. They didn't have like appearance, like, I couldn't make out like what they looked like, their face. They were just glowing figures. So anyway, I knew that those were angels. I just knew. Like, after I turned around and I went back to sleep, I stood looking at them for maybe a couple of minutes, but after I turned back and I went back to sleep, I just knew ever since then that those were angels. And I would tell like my friends in school and stuff like that, like growing up, and I just remember them just like ignoring me, just like, whatever, like, what are you talking about? But like, that was my first experience with the supernatural. I saw those angels, and I will never forget that. That will always stay with me. It was amazing. So that's how I know that angels exist. It was two of them, and me and my sister and I were sleeping on the sofa bed, and I just know that each one of us has an angel. We have a guardian angel. Maybe, I don't know if that's what it's called, the guardian angel, but I just know we each have an angel that are assigned to us from God. So, all right, going forward, I saw a lot of things I should not have seen. I've experienced things as a child that I should not, that no child should ever experience. But going forward, we in another apartment that we lived in, I experienced another supernatural thing, and this time it was my mom and I sleeping on a sofa bed again. I don't know why, but we were in the living room on a sofa bed, and I woke up. It was early in the morning. I woke up, and I turned to like face, I turned to face my mother, and when I turned, a snake. It was okay. What I saw was not an actual snake in the physical. It was a spirit snake, but it frightened me just as much as it would if it were a real snake. It was coiled, and it looked like it was about to devour or do something, like, eat my mother or something. And when I looked at the snake, when I turned, it lashed at me, like, like what snakes do when they're about to like sting you or bite you, whatever they do. So it did that to me, and I turned back around so quickly. I was so scared. I was so frightened that I could not even like open my eyes again after that. I closed my eyes so tightly, and I tried to go back to sleep, and that's what I did. I don't remember. I just fell back asleep because I was so scared. I did not want to see that again. So that was the second experience that I had with the supernatural. And after that, I remember just, and I didn't grow up going to church, religious or whatever. We were raised Catholic, because of my mom and my grandma. But my dad, he wasn't Catholic. He was just like Christian. Like, I don't know, because we grew up, like, he would take me. I remember one time we went to a Baptist church, and he would read the Bible to me as a child. Even though he struggled with alcoholism, my dad, he still read the Bible to me. And so he never spoke to me, like, he never like instilled things, like told me stuff about angels and stuff like that. So it wasn't like it was just me or just my mind, like I actually saw these things. I actually witnessed. I actually saw them. I saw the angels, and I saw the snake with my mother. And so anyway, my dad used to read the Bible to me. I didn't grow up like religious. I didn't go to church and stuff like that. Like, we went to Catholic church here and there, whatever. So And um, so yeah, so those are the two supernatural experiences that I had. And I remember from there on, like, I would just pray. Like, I didn't know like about God and stuff like that. Like the stuff that I was being, uh, how you call that? Like the way that I was growing up was so bad and dysfunctional, and like, I was always like worried about my mother. I was always like, you know, frustrated just with everything. Just growing up around, um, my mother, and like the drug abuse and all the dysfunction and everything. So like, um, I just remember praying and asking God after seeing that snake. Um, I would just say, God, please, like, I don't want to see anything else, like scary stuff. I don't want to see it anymore. Like, I remember I would pray, like, God, just please, like, if you're gonna, I don't want to see anything. I don't want to see any scary things anymore. After I saw that snake, and I would beg God, like, every time. I still remember as a child begging God, like, please, I don't want to see anything scary anymore. Nothing. And I didn't say that when I saw those angels, because those angels, they didn't scare me. I was just in awe, and I just looked at them for a couple minutes, and I went back to sleep. They did not scare me, but the snakes frightened me. And so anyway, I always knew growing up, like, I just felt like this sense of like not belonging, like just something different, like I just couldn't fit in. I just couldn't belong. I just always felt something, just I can't explain it. And so, as I got older, going forward, like there's a lot of stuff that I'm not gonna say or whatever, but I experienced a lot of things. But when I was 12, this was at another apartment that we were living in. My mom had a roommate, and the roommate had a daughter, which was kind of like my little sister. I called her because we were basically living together for a few years. So um, she was like my little sister. So anyway, I was 12, and my mother had gotten a stroke. Now, mind you, she was still using drugs. They were still living that lifestyle. It just had calmed down. Like when I was younger, it was more wild. But during this period of time when we were living in this certain apartment when I was 12, like those few years before I was 12, it was more calm, even though they still drank and they still, you know, used, and but it wasn't as like crazy as when I was younger. But anyway, my mom was addicted to something. She was hooked on drugs, and she wasn't taking care of herself, and she had gotten a stroke. Now she was 32. I think she was 32 years old. I was 12, and I could be wrong by like a year or two. I was 12 years old, and she got a stroke. She got brain hemorrhage, and my mom almost died. My mother almost died. That was one of the hardest times of my life, because I really thought that my mom was gonna die. It was so traumatic. I remember that whole time, while she was in the hospital, just how it was just a really, really, really hard time for me. She had brain hemorrhaging, and I actually really thought that she was gonna die, and it was a really difficult time for me. I remember having to go back home without my mother there. I was there with my mom's roommate at the time, and she would come, and I would be crying on my bed, and she would try to console me, but it was just really difficult. I felt very lonely, very alone at the time. I didn't have anybody to express my feelings to, I was just alone. And so, going forward, my mother didn't die, thank God. But she had the stroke now. Now she is left side paralyzed, and she had to learn how to walk again. She had to get physical therapy. She had to be in a wheelchair, and basically she had to be cared for. It wasn't the same anymore. She completely lost her left side mobility. And so um, I remember I had to take care of her. I had to help take care of her, and it was very difficult. And so the roommate at the time that she was with, it was a woman. Um, she started getting frustrated, and she didn't want to help take care of my mother anymore. And my mother couldn't, no longer, do things anymore like she used to. So that just broke apart, and we had to move. The roommate decided to move, and we had to move, and we had to find somewhere to live. So now, after that, this whole traumatic thing happened to my mother, I'm left to care for my mother. My mother's in a wheelchair now, left side paralyzed. My mother was still using. She still started using drugs after getting the stroke and being in the wheelchair, because all her friends still used. So her friends would come get her, and they would still be out there. My mother would be on the wheelchair in the streets with her friends, would be pushing her around, and they would still be getting high and getting drunk and doing all this stuff. So anyway, we had to move. We found this other place to live, and that's how it continued. And I got older, which it got worse. Some things happened to me like right before my mom had the stroke, where this person that lived next door to me, I was 13 years old. Yeah, so we still continue living there. I would say like maybe a year or two. Was it a year or two after she had the stroke? I think it was a year or two. Yeah, because 13, 14. I think we moved out like 14. I think we moved out by like 14 years old. I was 14 when we moved out of that place where my mom had the stroke. So we were still there, for about 2 years after she had the stroke. So she had the stroke 13. Yeah, 12 and 13. This older guy, I was 13 years old. This older guy, I used to be in the backyard with the little girl that I lived with, and I remember this guy next door. He was like in his 30s. I'm not gonna say too much. That's over with. But he took advantage of me. I was 13 years old. He was in his 30s. He had a wife at home. He had a child at home. And from there on, that relationship, or whatever that you call that, continued. So even after like we had to move to this other place when everything fell apart with my mom and her roommate, that relationship continued into the next apartment that we lived in. So, all right, I started using drugs. I started smoking. I started drinking. So from 13 and up, I went into high school, and that was a disaster. Like, I never went to school. I went for ninth grade, and my aunt tried everything that she could to keep me in school. She went to, God bless her. She went through so much, but nobody could tell me anything. By this time, I was determined to do whatever I wanted to do, because my mom wasn't, my mother wasn't there to guide me. She couldn't. She was messed up herself, so I didn't have that guidance from her. So like, if my mom wasn't gonna tell me anything, then I wasn't gonna listen to anyone else. And my dad at this time was absent as well. So by I think like 10th, like in the middle of 10th grade, like I had already dropped out of school and decided I wasn't going back. So I was just deep into this lifestyle of smoking weed, taking pills, taking acid, drinking heavily. I just lived my life like if I was an adult, basically. And, by the time I was like 15, I had already done some hard drugs. And I'm not going to say what that is, but I did do a couple of hard drugs, and we always hung out with adults. At the time, everybody that we hung out with were adults. We didn't, when I say we, it's like me and my best friend, my friend at the time, my best friend. She's my sister-in-law now, but we hung out with adults, and that's just how it was. So, so 13, 14, 15, 16, I was very promiscuous, and I did a lot of things that I am not proud of, but I am who I am today because of everything that I went through and because of God saving me. So anyway, going forward, I lived my entire teenage life on drugs and drinking, and basically like partying like a rock star, just miserable. I hated myself. I had low self-esteem. I needed drugs. I needed alcohol to feel normal. I was promiscuous, and I basically should be dead right now from everything that I experienced. We used to go clubbing. I don't know how I got into clubs as a 16-year-old. Honestly, like we went to clubs in New York and everything. Like we basically lived our lives like we were adults. So anyway, long story short, going forward, I shared before like my story about having, abortions and stuff like that. I had 2 abortions, and after the second one, I was with my boyfriend at the time, who is my husband now, Angel. I had the first abortion we had, 2, another one with another guy before that, and then after that was my husband now. I had an abortion, and then after that experience, those 2 abortions, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. It was so traumatic. I was even more depressed. I hated myself even more. I remember just crying out and begging God, like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I promise God, like, I will never do this again. Like, I promise you, if I get pregnant again, I'm never going to have an abortion again. And that's what happened. I got pregnant again with my husband, our first child. She's 16 years old now. She's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I love her so much. And so, anyway, going forward, I struggled with just a self-hatred, fear. I was so scared about what was going on and happening in the world. I had so much low self-esteem from the years of trauma that I endured as a teenager. All the sexual abuse and everything. Like, I had so much self-hatred and low self-esteem. And so I carried that into my adulthood. And I began having issues with alcoholism as well myself, like coming from that life. I've been using since I was 13. So, I carried that into my adulthood. I had my daughter, and I used to drink so much. I drank, and then I used to smoke weed, and I was just addicted. And I remember I used to just get so drunk. When my daughter was little, when she was a baby, and my husband would be at work, and I would just get so drunk. I would drive. I would pick up my friends. I had a couple friends I hung out with at that time. I would drive drunk. There were times that I didn't even remember how I got home, And I remember, like, the next day, those same friends that I would be with, they would tell me, like, yo, Mari, like, we were telling you to chill and slow down, and you didn't listen, And I'm like, I think about it now, and I'm just like, I could have killed someone. I could have honestly killed someone. The way that I used to just get so trashed and so drunk and just go and drive. And so anyway, let me just break this down to make it shorter. So, after that, it went on, and I think my daughter was about, I don't know, she was like 3. I don't know, maybe like 2 or, I think she was like 3. My sister started going to church, and in that lifestyle that I told you we were living in, like as a teenager, I was with my sister too. My sister was with me, and we basically hung out together, and we had like our friends were like, we were all friends with each other, like her friends and some of her friends, not all, my friends and her friends and stuff like that. So anyway, she started going to church, and something changed about her, something really dramatic, something completely changed. And I saw this change, but like I didn't think anything of it. I just knew that something had happened. So I remember her, inviting me to church, and I was just like, oh no, at first I was just like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't need to go to church or whatever. And she would always invite me though. And so, anyway, after a while, like, I was like, of course, like, I struggled with the self-hatred and the alcoholism, and I was struggling so much internally. Like, I don't know if nobody else noticed, but what I was feeling inside was just, I hated life. I hated myself. And I was fearful. I was so fearful and hopeless. And so I started having this struggle. Like, I would smoke weed, I would go outside to smoke, and I would just look. And even cigarettes too. I was a heavy cigarette smoker. I mean, I was a chain smoker. You ask anybody that knew me back then, they were like, yeah, Mari's a chain smoker. And I used to just look at the cigarette and look at the blunt, and I would just be like, I hate doing this. I hate that this is the person that I am, needing to smoke and needing these things. I hated that I depended on those things to make me feel, content or whatever for a little while. It never lasted. But I just hated it. I hated life. I was just, looking at pictures of me, you would never know, but, I did. I was a mess on the inside. I really despised myself. I really did. And I hated that I was smoking. I hated that I needed to drink. I hated it. I hated getting drunk all the time. I could never just drink regular and just have a drink or two. No, it was always like getting drunk to the point of passing out, or doing something crazy, so anyway. So one day I finally accepted her invitation to go to church, and I went and I started going. Like, we started going to church together, and I was going, I don't know for how long. We were going before, like, I had this experience I'm about to tell you about, but I just know that I was going for a while before I even, like, anything happened. So, like, I would go, and then, like, I remember there were times that I would go on my own. Like, it started, like, I started finding comfort in going, so I would go on my own. There were days that my sister couldn't make it and couldn't go, so I would go on my own. And so anyway, I would take my daughter and stuff like that. So one day I went to church, and it was a Sunday, and I was sitting there, and the preacher was preaching, and at the time it was Bishop. He's gone on now. He's in heaven now. But he was preaching, and I don't remember what he was saying. I just know that he was preaching, and I was listening, and I'm sitting there, and next thing you know, it just felt like something just, like, I can't explain it. It was a supernatural thing, but it just felt like somebody had just, like, cut my heart. Like, somebody just made an incision into my heart, and I just, all of a sudden, I just felt everything. I felt like my eyes were opened. Like, I had this aha moment. It was just like, but my heart was broken. My heart was broken. It was broken. I was weeping and I was sobbing in the sanctuary. And I remember they had to come, and they had to get someone to come bring me out of the sanctuary and bring me into another room and sit down and pray with me. And so at the time, I did not know what was happening to me, but now I know. In the Bible, it says that when we're saved, we have circumcision, because like in the Bible, God commanded the Israelites to circumcise their child. But in the New Testament, it says that what God desires from us is a circumcised heart. So I know that that's what happened to me that day, that beautiful day that changed my life forever. My heart was circumcised. God was actually performing surgery on my heart that day. And my life has never been the same. My life has never been the same since that day. That day I was officially saved, and that's what happened. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's how I got saved, a supernatural thing. So I've experienced a lot of supernatural things, right? Growing up, those two major ones with the angels and the snake, And then how I got saved was supernatural. It wasn't just like I started going to church and I became a church girl and all that. No, what happened to me was supernatural. And my life has been forever changed. Does that mean that now everything was perfect and I was all of a sudden a church girl and I was perfect? No, not at all. So I'm not claiming that. And whoever's hearing me now and that knows me from the past, I'm not saying that at all. I still struggled with some things, and God had to work on me over the years, and I'm still being worked on. And it's been about 13 years now, 12 years, 12 years now, and no, 13, yeah. I'm still being worked on. You know, God is still shaping me. God is still molding me. You know, I'm never gonna be complete until He says so, until He feels fit, like I'm, you know, that He's done. But so I still have things that I want to talk about, and things that I want to share. I have another testimony about something that happened between me and my husband, and how God spoke to me and told me what was going to happen, and it came to pass. I've had many dreams that have came to pass, some that have not yet. And so I experience the supernatural all the time. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. I wanted to share my testimony so that you could just get to know me a little bit better and know my history or whatever. So I hope that it makes you know me a little bit more. And God bless you. Until next time. Bye.